In the early 2000s, an unassuming raccoon dog by the name of Thomas Nook opened a shop in a small village. After 20 years of business, his operation has expanded into a veritable empire, spanning retail stores, construction, real estate, home remodeling services, as well as selling vacation packages that he dubs island getaways. His ventures also involve major players in textiles, infrastructure, and private airlines. After a series of investigations into his business dealings, competition, and personal history with colleagues, I have found evidence that Tom Nook is a mob boss masquerading as a legitimate businessman. His primary goals are absolute control of his territory, unyielding expansion of his enterprises, and total elimination of his rivals. And as we speak, he is on the hunt for blood. The earliest records we can analyze of Tom Nook's public facing persona is in 2001, where he ran a small shop in a town whose name, as far as my research has shown, is not entirely clear. What we do know is that he set up shop in a town that was so lively and growing. Wide eyed would be residents took train rides to get to this town, desperately wanting to move in, without any money or even a place to live when they got there. It is here that Tom Nook manages to finesse these naive wanderers who sought to call this village home into his unwitting accessories. This is a common theme we will see in every aspect of his operations. He uses unsuspecting villagers, typically humans over other species, to do his dirty work. It is my belief that these humans are responsible for the breakneck speed at which his criminal enterprise expanded. Multiple anonymous sources that I have spoken to informed me that an agent, someone I believe was working for Tom Nook as a scout, was able to lure young, inexperienced humans to this town and encourage them to increase their debt to him further and further, with each new loan offer doubling the last. Something tells me that saying no was never an option. My sources tell me that this smooth talking cat named Rover came up to them, complete strangers, and attempted to begin a friendship with them on the train. He then gleaned a wealth of information from them using psychological tricks and manipulation. This sinister individual had all of the makings of a con artist, and after connecting each source with Mr. Nook, none of them ever heard from Rover again. Some friend. Despite the blatantly corrupt behavior of offering home loans to individuals without any money, income, collateral, or credit history, there are many more seedy dealings that went on behind the scenes in these towns. In order to pay for their loans, Nook initially required that these humans work for him in his shop. This, of course, didn't last long. Nook couldn't have an outsider getting too close to the heart of the organization. He lays them off and then requires them to do a number of menial tasks and hard labor, including harvesting fruit from local orchards or retrieving fish from nearby rivers and shores, in order to sell those items back to him. He then gives them a small percentage of what he will sell them for, only to receive most of that pay back in the form of housing payments, purchases from his shop, and so on. These unsuspecting people owed their souls to the company store. As Nook's business grew, so did his aspirations. After a period of growth, including numerous stores in other locations, he began to encroach onto the big fish. Or so he thought. In 2008, Tom Nook opened a series of stores in larger cities with flashing lights, strip malls, comedy clubs, salons, and fancy boutiques. But as we all know, many businesses struggled to cope with the economic downturn of 2008. And Tom Nook, crooked as he is, was no different. But to add insult to injury, he was stuck in the cities, with much more competition than he may have expected. Tom Nook's experience in the city and the effect it had on him, I believe, changed him forever. If he didn't always have a Scarface fantasy, this was when it came to him. When you have competition, you might lose money to them. The only way to combat this was to control everything from the top down. According to my research, a town mayor named Tortimer may have been the last straw that finally caused Nook to snap. What I'm about to say is purely conjecture, but you will see that the rest of my research is rock solid. I have reason to believe that Nook approached Tortimer with some kind of offer, a little you scratch my back, I'll wax your shell kind of scenario. But this snapping turtle didn't bite. Therein lies the problem for Tom. The municipal governments had always kept him at arm's length. They needed to project fairness and equality. But how can you control the very hand of capitalism while attempting to portray yourself as a good faith participant? Easy. You become the government. This brings us to 2012. As the world economy is beginning to return and more restrictions are being placed on banks in order to prevent the kind of bad debt scenario that caused the crash in the first place, Tom Nook needed to reassess. How could he stay the course while commandeering the advantages he so desperately sought for himself? Finally, it clicked. Tom Nook needed to turn over a new leaf. He wasn't just a retail giant. He could be anything. He decided to return to and expand one of his previously small-time ventures. He was going to enter real estate, and it was going to be huge. As a hallmark of criminal mentality, nepotism runs rampant. He turns over the day-to-day management of his retail branch to his nephews, Timmy and Tommy Nook. Two brothers who seemed to try their hardest to impress their father figure, but never quite come close. Also, one of them seems to be a little bit slower than the other. Does this remind you of anyone? For the final piece in this master plan, he turns to another old trick: the total incompetence of the human race. In one such case, he arranges for some total nobody to become the mayor of a town, to act as a figurehead while he is behind the scenes pulling all the strings. To complete this puppetry, he hires an earnest young pup named Isabel to take care of all the finer details. The villagers believe that the human is in charge, including the human themselves, while Isabel knows what Mr. Nook expects from her: total obedience, like a dog. For whatever reason, she takes that arrangement and continues it on for as long as I can tell. Her brother was initially part of the scheme as well, but he began to distance himself from Mr. Nook. My research shows that Isabel is still working with Nook in some capacity, even to this day. The only slight hiccup for Nook's illicit ventures are the humans' unexpected tendencies to make friends with every bunny they meet. A married couple named Cyrus and Reese, two alpaca, opened a kitschy furniture repair and consignment store in one of these towns. While the puppet mayor was fine with this, behind the scenes, Nook was absolutely furious. Within a year or so, the happy couple were chased out of town with nothing but their lives. They have been on the run ever since. A longtime rival with more transparent illicit business practices was Red, a sly fox who has cheated, swindled, and conned so many hapless villagers out of their hard-earned cash. Nook once seemingly allowed Red to operate with impunity, or simply had no other way of dealing with him. Until now. At the time of reporting, there have been no confirmed sightings of Red for many years, for reasons still unknown. Whispers of him buying a boat and sailing off into the sunset have been floated by some. This period of prosperity brought about fantasies of absolute control. The very idea became intoxicating for Nook. He became fully engrossed with his desires for control. He had tasted near absolute victory, and he was hungry for more. More power, more control, more authority. The only thing he didn't want more of was oversight. It was time for him to abandon hopes of controlling the government or installing some lackey to even pretend to be above him. He needed to leave civilization behind and set sail for new horizons. I imagine it must have come to him in a dream. He woke up with a start in his luxurious bed, his satin sheets, last night's coconut juice resting on his nightstand, only to have come up with the most ingenious plan ever. But before I tell you about that, I have to tell you about someone this story has left out so far. The one man who Nook has always envied. The man who has always been one step ahead. The man who Tom Nook needs to eliminate before he will ever be satisfied. His name is Cap'n. Much like another thorn in Nook's side, he resembles a turtle. And unlike Tom Nook, he is an honest, hard-working man who is willing to do what it takes to provide for his family. Through my research, I have found that Cap'n may be an honorably discharged sailor who left the Navy due to a complication with a crack on his shell, most likely an injury in the line of duty. Most of his adult life, he has worked blue-collar jobs, mainly as a driver for taxis and buses. But way back in 2013, Cap'n decided to quit the rat race for good and carve out his own little paradise. He left civilization behind and moved to an island with his family, his grandmother, his wife, and a very young daughter, whose names I will withhold out of respect for their safety. Having successfully carved out his own little piece of the pie, he was able to live life on his own terms. He opened his family's private island to tours, allowed visitors to come in and explore the natural bounty there. Due to their decision to live off the grid per se, he had no need for traditional currency, so he did away with bells and actually created his own. His family assisted with operating the island as a tourist destination and even made crafts to sell to customers. As respectable and enterprising as all this is, it proved to be absolutely maddening to a cold, calculating thug like Tom Nook. Cap'n, a rival he had known for over a decade, was able to fulfill Nook's pipe dream while making it look easy. Tom Nook was angry. Tom Nook wanted vengeance. Tom Nook would do anything to ensure his absolute control, and he was willing to resort to violence to get it. So, with a scheme in mind, it was time to set into motion his ultimate fleece. He hired two former Black Ops military quacks with questionable morals to run reconnaissance on his enemy. They were able to track Cap'n and his family to their deserted island. He had them wait for the right moment to strike, collecting data and studying their behavior. One night, just after his wife had tucked their baby girl into bed, the pilot known only as Orville flew his plane low as his brother, Wilbur, a known munitions expert, firebombed the island. The hut, the dock, and their entire lives were upended in an instant. Cap'n narrowly escaped with his wife and child to his boat. His mother, tragically, was consumed by the flames. Her body was never recovered. With a feverish haste, he relied on his Navy training to speed away and evade detection from the aircraft. His vessel, once a tool used to build his freedom, now represented a desperate attempt to flee from these heartless marauders. Nook was less than pleased with their lack of ability to finish the job, but he was more than willing to give them a second chance. Despite this setback, the plan was still coming together, and he was willing to overlook their shortcomings. Nook, now operating under the creatively titled corporation Nook Inc., began to advertise a deserted island getaway package in the summer of 2018. Those who wished to escape the harsh realities of their lives could move to a deserted island and enjoy the simpler things in life. I wonder where Nook got such a great idea. Once they moved in, Nook had everything he wanted, all in one place. He could shut off the cell phones of anyone on the island at a moment's notice. And he could make whatever propaganda-laden daily announcements he wished. He had Isabel returning to her role as his trusty assistant. He hired some hapless humans to make the decisions that didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. Sure, put the buildings wherever you want. Just keep bringing that money in. He owned it all. He owned the stores. He owned the land. He sold the houses and all the furniture you could put in them. The only businesses allowed to remain in his circle promised 3 things: absolutely no competition to his interests, unyielding loyalty to his criminal empire, and a 15% cut of all profits. The final cherry tree on top was that he had the humans do more recon, since the Dodo Duo had failed in that task in the past. The humans would be sent out to one of the hundreds of thousands of smaller deserted islands in the archipelago he'd chased Captain into. Every time the humans go to a new island without Captain, Wilbur burns the flight map. One more island checked off the list. It's only a matter of time before he finds his rival and rips apart what little shred of a life he has left. Tom Nook is a heartless, cruel, manipulative mafioso, and his desires are clear: absolute power by any means necessary. He will stop at nothing to get what he wants. Don't get in his way. Don't question his methods. You can't leave the island without his planes. You can't call home without his phones. He owns everything. He owns the ground you walk on. And now, he owns you, too. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Wayne, a voice actor and voiceover artist. I'm available for commercial projects and would love to work with you. Please contact me on Instagram or by email at meetrobwayne@gmail.com.